Hello, my name is Tobias Muller. I'm happy to speak, as I've been invited to, on Planet Repair's Internationalist Solidarity, Global Scholar-Activist Relationship Building and Collaboration for an Inclusive Global Academy Commons of Pluriversality, and what that might mean. So I like just to share some brief notes on what role information and knowledge exchange in different areas can play towards planet repairs. First of all, I think it's really important to share and uncover and do more research on stories of resistance and collaboration that already exist and that have been going on for centuries. So very often colonialism and the practice is very much only seen as the violence that is there, that has been exercised by the colonial powers. And often in that mode, the people that have been colonized are cast as passive victims. But that's not true. There have been a myriad of ways of resistance, of sometimes violent, sometimes indirect, and other forms of evading colonial control that have been going on across all the colonial empires in different ways. We, however, know not enough about that. Or these stories are not very widely known and widely told. And that is something really important to recover, as these stories of resistance, of ignoring, of partial collaboration. Also, of course, there was that. I think it's important to bring in these complexities as well, because there have been often also local elites who have collaborated with various colonial powers. So it's a much more complex picture, as also on part of the Germans, for instance, speaking for the German Empire, there have been Germans, particularly on the left and the far left, Rosa Luxemburg, for instance, who have been very vocal anti-imperialists and anti-colonialists. It was not all the Germans that supported colonialism. And it's important to recover those memories and those people as well, to not make it a easy, it's one country against another country. That's, of course, part of the dynamic, but they have in both countries always people aligning with the other side. And we need to get those complexities into focus. Also, specifically with regards to Ghana, there's often in Germany the sense that it's been a kind of a model colony, and that there was hardly any violence there compared to the incredibly violent genocide of the Herero and Nama people in Namibia. But that's not true. The records show that there were at least 18, probably up to 60 military engagements between German colonial officers and local populations. So there was resistance, there was violence, also in Togoland, what is now Togo, and Ghana. And these memories continue in many German cities that I've visited, their so-called Africa quarters, where the streets still bear the names of former German colonies or German colonizers. There's a Togo street, Nachtigall, which is one of the main colonial explorers. And people, bit by bit, are advocating for renaming those or making those places of commemoration of the German colonialism as well. So what can be done in terms of, or what is being done in terms of democratization and decolonization of education, of that knowledge production? So first of all, for instance, the debates about reparations are a really important, I think, inflection point in learning about colonialism and in learning about what can be done or should be done about it today. There has been a recent agreement between the German and Namibian government to pay 1 billion euros in reparations for the genocide. At the same time, the many Herero and Nama people have not been consulted and recognized, and there are significant disagreements about that, that the payment is too low, and that still the actual recognition and the understanding of what actually happened is totally insufficient. For instance, on Shark Island outside Luderitz Bay in Namibia, there's the site of the first German concentration camp, maybe of the first genocide of the 20th century. And there is a plaque that still commemorates many of the German soldiers, but it does not commemorate the lives of the many Herero and Nama people that have been killed there. So this is a place, I think there was a local struggle where a lot is still missing in these first steps of understanding. But I think it's an important point that there is movement there. There's a lot of movement, a lot of room for possibility as well, which leads us to the point of debt cancellation that Thomas Sankara has already been calling for, as he famously said, if we pay, we die. So we can't pay these debts because it literally leads to the bleeding out of resources of post-colonial independent states across sub-Saharan Africa. And so there's an increasing pressure on states for the cancellation of debts, because these debts were not legitimate in many cases in the first place, due to the incredible flow of wealth and of resources from the global south to the global north. In addition to that, the global north, through centuries of industrialization, has amassed an enormous amount of climate debt, of pollution, of destruction, in addition to the colonial destruction and violence that it has to pay back. Another way to push forward decolonization for planetary pairs is to radically redesign and rethink what education, especially higher education, means. For me, that means we have to involve students in the design of curricula, in deciding over the methods of learning, but also the institutional setups. We need much more democratic participation by junior staff and students at the highest level of the university, and push back against the neoliberalization of universities that just ties academic and thinking towards quantifiable measures. That destroys any type of academic inquiry, but particularly inquiries that do not conform to the quantifiable measures often developed by and dictated by US American private universities. And unions play a key role in that. For instance, the University and College Union is combining the struggles for closing the gender pay gap, which is still at 18%, fairer pay for particular junior staff against the real term wage cuts, and climate reparations and divestment from fossil fuels. These struggles need to come together, and the power of lecturers and of students needs to come together for that. Also involved in a network of already existing knowledges, because there's often this understanding that people come from communities, and they come particularly to educational institutions in the global north without knowledge. But that's of course not true. There's so many knowledges that are not recognized forms of knowing, particularly very deep ecological knowledge, but also political knowledge on how to construct institutions, hold leaders accountable, and live in a way that the next 7 generations of all species also can live on. And so these knowledges that can be often very practical. It's about metalworking, it's about farming, about weaving, but also about democratic decision-making, need to be brought to the fore and need to be brought into what we understand as higher education, but also we need to bring ourselves out into the world, to these places of learning that so far have been often ignored. And just a final point, I think bit by bit, there seems to be an acknowledgement in the global climate movement that alliances with indigenous peoples, indigenous sovereignty, and decolonization is necessary in order to win. And one of the reasons for that is that the industrialization in the global north relies on rare earths, on fossil fuels, on many other resources from the global south. And so the power in that regard is and rests in the global south. And that is something that progressive movements in the global north need to take seriously and build their strategies on that as well. Just give you one example, a recent system change camp, one of the biggest climate camps in Hamburg, was under the slogan, "Stop Colonial Violence." So there seemed to be a coming together of decolonial and climate movements. And I think this is an incredibly important rallying point, combining climate reparations, strikes across the global north and the global south, understanding where the supply chains are, and reestablishing local sovereignty over resources in formerly colonized country. And that is a task where South-North collaboration and learning is crucial to achieve planet repairs. Thank you.